Hello, welcome to another episode of Rustacean Station. I'm your host, Alan Wyma. Before we start, I'm excited to share that we're hosting Rust Asia Conference 2025 on March 28th in Hong Kong. This is your chance to dive into the world of Rust in Asia and beyond. We've already got Tim McNamara, the author of Rust in Action, as our keynote speaker, and more speakers will be announced soon. Check out all the details at www.rustasiaconf.com. Now back to the episode. Today we have Vitaly. We first met in person a month ago or so at Rust China conference, I think it's called, in Shanghai. And we spent most of our time talking together because obviously we're the few foreign people and we shared some common interests. Maybe better you introduce yourself because I don't remember even asked for your position, what you exactly do. So maybe you go ahead.
Hello, I am Vitaly Bragilevsky. Yeah, I'm a developer advocate at JetBrains. I mainly work with RustRover, our IDE for Rust by JetBrains. And yeah, I regularly visit different Rust conferences, including Rust China, and we've met there. So yeah, so that's usually speaking about different Rust-related stuff at conferences, give different talks. For example, at Rust China, I was speaking about interactive debugging experience and all that. And yeah, I also visited other Rust conferences, like this fall I was at RustConf, I was at Eurorust. So yeah, regular conference attendee, I should say.
When we were talking together, we talked about quite a few things, and it's good to talk to somebody who's kind of a veteran, I could say, of attending conferences in different aspects, right? You've attended as speaker quite a few times, obviously an attendee, I'm pretty sure. We met when your capacity was a sponsor / speaker, and you gave me a lot of really, really good insights, and that conference had a lot of really, really good, I don't know what you call that, inputs or whatever. They did some stuff pretty good. They did some stuff that I think could be better, but you definitely gave me some interesting thoughts, right? And I did want to kind of cover, your experience of conferences so far, at least this year or even further on, if you want to talk about that. Like, can you say that okay, like maybe things in Europe are done like this, or can you say like, what can you say about conferences? Because it is every place does things differently, and definitely I would say for the sponsors at this last event, it was a little bit more quiet than I'm used to. I don't know if you felt the same in terms of, the interactions.
First and foremost, I want to express my gratitude to all conference organizers, because I can see that it is a very, very hard job organizing that stuff, because there are so many issues. You have to think about so many things. And of course, it's not everything that is in their hands. So there are things out of their control, and I understand that. So of course I can say this was better there, this was worse there, but to be honest, I admire all of them because all of them did a very good job. I would say I don't see differences between continents like America, Europe, Asia, but all of the conferences are really different. So I always look at the venue in terms of like, is this venue good for conference participants, like regular attendees? Is it good for sponsors, for example? For me, when we sponsoring an event, it is very important to be visible for conference participants. So we do need folks visiting our booths. So if it is not very convenient, if it is like possible to avoid sponsor booths at all, then this definitely doesn't contribute to a good conference for us, for sponsors. It might be great for participants. They're listening to great talks, for example, or like at this recent Eurorust conference, there was this great idea of implementation rooms where you have tables and where you can hack on your own project or on some other's project. So special room dedicated to actually coding in Rust. So this is like very, very good idea. And I saw that many folks actually using this possibility to hack together on something Rust related. So food is always very different. Maybe sorry for talking about that, but for conference participants, it is important to have some decent food at the venue because they spend there a lot of time, like from early morning till late evening. So you do need to have some decent food. And of course, I think it's very difficult to secure speakers for a conference. But in this regard, I would say that all conferences did a great job actually. So you cannot predict some stuff like sometimes speaker is sick, not they're not able to participate, for example, like and they like on a very short notice, and then you need to have someone maybe to replace. You need some flexibility in your schedule to make all things smooth and all that. So yeah, difficult, very hard job, and they all of them they're doing great job organizing that.
Yeah, and I have to say the attending a conference and attending it in different roles gives you different ideas because, like you said, you have different expectations, right? You were kind of saying about the talks, right? Great for attendees, but doesn't necessarily bring a lot of value to the sponsors unless the sponsor say maybe has a spot on there, or at least their banner or your logo is visible, something like that. But you're the point about you having people come to visit the sponsors, I think is important because people, I think, forget about that part, right? Somebody I know just attended an event and they were a sponsor and they felt very upset because the way they were treated. I mean, they're kind of just like, oh, you have a special table and you sit over there, and then like they were just left alone the whole night instead of being not necessarily taken care of or pampered, but like just some more interaction. And I think they didn't get anything out of it what they're looking for. But what I really loved about this conference, and I even told the organizer a few times, I'm going to steal this idea, was the chop idea. Do you remember that one? I think you must remember that. That's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, I like it too. So look, there are two sides of this story actually. So first, it's in some sense it is a responsibility of a sponsor to attract folks to the booth. Maybe through some funny ways of interaction, maybe through giveaways, maybe like for example, we at JetBrains, we at Rust conferences, we usually organize quizzes like with funny questions about Rust ecosystem, and we attract some folks. And of course, we have swag. But for us, it is also important to get feedback from our users, maybe to get some information on what they're using Rust for, stuff like that. So it's not only about attracting them, but it's also about the convenience for any attendee to visit a booth. Like imagine if you need to go like somewhere with this specific idea, like I need to visit a booth, that's one thing. And if you just happen to be in that area with sponsors and you don't need to go anywhere, this is another thing. So you don't need additional motivation to go somewhere to talk to sponsors. And sponsors are always happy to talk. They are interested in all things about you because, well, you are like part of Rust community, Rust ecosystem. So yeah, it's about general organizing, like a map of a venue, right? So it can be convenient to visit booths, or it can be inconvenient. It can be like there is something demanding going somewhere specifically. So that's the difference.
Well, I just also want to piggyback on this. Sponsors are always ready to, or always willing to talk. I think for the most part, most sponsors are, but I have to point out, I'm not going to name shame anybody, but you and I both know there was some sponsors at the event that did not seem so interested to talk. which I think is kind of a little bit of a downer for both that company and their chance to kind of get in front of people. It's just to me when I look at that, it's like, wow, what a waste. They're paying this person, I'm guessing, most likely to sit there because you can tell that they're not invested as an owner would be. They're just sitting there playing with their phone, they're not really into it. And sometimes they're not even at the booth. I mean, I don't know where they are, but I'm pretty sure they're probably not doing something important at the time. Again, I'm not gonna name shame anybody, but I mean that I just wanted to say that part on the behalf of the sponsor too. Like, there's responsibility on all sides of this event. So it's like, not only do the organizers have to, be doing their best job, attendees, of course, have to do a good job, and it's important for them to also visit the booths too because it lets sponsors know that hey, maybe this is worth it to keep going. And then again, also the sponsors to, you know, also participate and be really happy. For sure, JetBrains, I think, was the most active sponsor that I could well, I don't know, it's hard to say. Let's say it like this. In your own style, you were definitely the most active, right? Everybody had different styles, right? And it was interesting to see, and the gimmicky stuff was sometimes interesting, sometimes it didn't really work. Like, there was another booth that was you'd play a game, but it was interesting that you'd try something interesting, I'm not gonna say who it was because in the end, when I went to visit them and I tried their game, it didn't really work, and they didn't know how to explain to me, and they just, like, gave me the toy or thing, and then they're like, "Okay, thanks for coming by," and I was like, "Alright, I'm happy I got this thing, but I don't know what I just tried. I don't know what the point of it was," and it was broken. So it seemed like a so that's a little bit on the sponsor side to kind of communicate what it is that I'm trying to do and what it is that they're doing, because I really don't know. Actually, I do know what they do, but at the same time, I also don't. Again, I'm not gonna name shame who it is, but yeah, there's this kind of problem. But for sure, super happy with how JetBrains came in. They had banners, they had people ready to go. You gave a speech. I didn't watch it, but everybody was very active, and it. I feel like towards the end of the conference, people were actually coming to you as opposed to before. It seemed like I don't know if they were avoiding you guys, but they were definitely not as active as they were towards the end. Maybe just needed some time to get to know who you guys were. I'm not too sure, but very happy that we got to meet over there, and I'm super happy that you guys could come because it was a lot of fun to know more about JetBrains, right, and what you guys are doing in the Rust space. Because yeah, I mean, there's some talk about it, and that's actually the main topic of today is about what is JetBrains doing in the Rust space, specifically with RustRover. But maybe we can kind of take a step back and talk a little bit more about what is JetBrains doing in Rust, and kind of where do you see yourselves?
We at JetBrains, we are doing mainly IDEs, integrated development environments, and RustRover is IDE for Rust, and we've launched it a little bit more than 1 year ago, and it was released commercially this May. So for us as a company which does IDEs, it is important to provide smooth experience when working with programming languages, when writing code. And of course, we try to keep up with the current state of arts in this area. So we want to, like, first provide all the functionality we always had, like, so you write, you get some assistance from code analysis tools, and like code completion, type checking, all that stuff. You can get information from Rust compiler, but you can also have refactorings, so you can rename variable everywhere in your project very easily. You can manage your dependencies. If you work with database, you can connect to database and explore what's there, which tables, what do they have. If you're developing a web application, then there is built-in HTTP client, so you can check and actually test your web requests. If you are so you can for example, you can use debugger, which is also built in. So a lot of stuff. We also have a lot of things about AI support, which is very popular today. You can ask AI to explain this code, to generate your code, like generate tests, for example, or you can ask to explain your error that you've got from a compiler, stuff like that. So of course we also do that because these days it's important part of any IDE experience. So for JetBrains, Rust is an important language, and by important, we mean that we actually develop IDE for it. And with this product, we try to be active in the Rust community. So that's why we participate in conferences. We want to raise awareness about RustRover. We want to talk about its features. We want to talk about pain points, maybe. So we always welcome folks coming to our booths at conferences and telling us about the issues they could have with RustRover. And we always try maybe to fix them, or at least to record information about them right at the conference, just to make sure that we don't forget it and deal with it at some point. So yeah, that's what we are in this Rust space.
I'm not sure if you have addressed this because I'm not sure. Were you on this same podcast before with Lucas? Was it?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Did you discuss about the whole plugin?
But it was like before launch of RustRover, I think.
Okay, but I mean, there was still some confusion at the very beginning about deprecation of the plugin and things like that. I'm guessing you must have covered that.
Simple, actually. So we used to develop at JetBrains, we used to develop so-called IntelliJ Rust plugin, which was a plugin for all our IDEs. And so we did that, I think, from maybe 2016. I don't remember precisely, but for a long time we developed that plugin. And then at some point, when we decided to build a dedicated IDE, which means like another level of support, we decided to do it in closed source, because that's what we normally do at JetBrains. So if we develop just yet another community plugin, then it's fine to be open source. But if it's a professional IDE, then we usually do it in closed source. So what we did at that time, we deprecated old plugin and started developing a so-called new plugin, which is also called Rust plugin, and it's the same as RustRover, but you can use it in other our IDEs, such as IntelliJ IDEA or CLion. So it's the same functionality, it's a new plugin, and the same functionality is available in RustRover as well. So that's the story. There was old plugin, and well, it was community plugin, but we developed it at JetBrains. So we were responsible for it. But then we stopped supporting it, so we've deprecated it and started developing a new one, which is base for RustRover.
Yeah, I've always gotten confused, and I think we addressed this when we were in Shanghai about which IDE to use because it seems when I look at all the products offered, my understanding is the IntelliJ IDEA or that ultimate one. And when you see the word ultimate, you're expecting all the features, all the bells and whistles, but that's not necessarily true per se, right? Because if I'm going to be doing everything and I need to choose an IDE that, well, not everything, but let's say I do a bunch of things and that includes Rust, would it make sense for me to actually have a license for RustRover and for IntelliJ IDEA that the ultimate one, or can I just do everything with the ultimate version? Do I need it? Because you also were just saying, in my understanding of what you just said, is that there's this new plugin that I could just add in, and it's basically RustRover. So do I need to actually use RustRover, or can I just install that plugin and it's the same experience?
In terms of functionality, yes, it's the same experience, but it all depends on what you need. So if you need to work with Rust, maybe Rust with some web technologies occasionally, like web front-end technologies, then RustRover is enough for you. You don't need anything else. If you already happen to have IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate subscription, then you don't need RustRover, because Ultimate subscription includes Rust plugin, and you can get the same experience in IntelliJ IDEA. When I personally use it, like for me, like RustRover is more limited than IntelliJ IDEA because it doesn't have support for Java and Kotlin. And that means that you just have less functionality in all the lists, in all dialects, and it's easier for you to find something Rust specific. So if it's purely Rust project, then it's like, for me, it's more convenient to work in RustRover. But IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate is enough. And in general, we also have so-called old products pack, which includes everything. So if you subscribe to it, then you can use IDEA Ultimate, you can use Selenium, you can use RustRover, whatever works better for you. So in general, it depends. So if you have a lot of functionality, even if you don't use it, then that's fine. Ultimate is for you. If you work with different projects like Rust, maybe something with Kotlin or Java, maybe Scala, then IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate is better, because you have one tool and you can do everything there. It's your choice, and of course it's also about pricing. Ultimate is more expensive than just RustRover used commercially.
Then a kind of a follow-up question. I remember, I think you kind of a little bit touched on this one. I'm guessing the answer, but I'll still ask it anyways. I remember doing a check a long time ago, and I was saying like, okay, if because I have like a license to all of the products, and I could just install whatever ID I have a license for it. But the question was, which one should I use? Should I use IntelliJ Ultimate or should I use Sea Lion? Right. And I think I asked you this question in Shanghai because a lot of people were saying, no, definitely use Sea Lion over Ultimate. And to me, it's really confusing because it sounds like what you just said is that basically Ultimate kind of has a little bit of everything, at least, if not everything. But if you're going to be doing C specifically, so obviously Sea Lion makes more sense and it's cheaper. Is there any difference in terms of Rust Rover versus Sea Lion? If I just say add the Rust extension to it? Because this kind of question, I mean, there's probably lots of C houses, C shops that are using Sea Lion. So if they just add the plugin rather than getting the whole license for Rust Rover, does that make sense for these kinds of places?
There is one difference. Selenium can be used for embedded development because it has features for something like connecting to a device and do remote debugging stuff on the device. So this is something we don't have in RustRover, and I think it's also missing from IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate. So they have some low-level stuff, low-level embedded development, which is not available in other IDEs. So if you do something like that, like embedded programming with Rust, chances are you might need to have Selenium. Otherwise, it's just the same. So it's like we have in our documentation, we have a feature comparison table actually, and it says exactly that. So some debugging experience for devices is available only in Selenium. But apart from that, everything else is just the same. But in general, as I said, I would say it's more about your own preference. If it's okay to have like for example, you are creating a project, and then in IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate you will have hundreds of options which project you want to create. And in RustRover, it just either Rust binary or Rust library, and it's very easy to choose. While in Ultimate, you need to find that Rust specific project. So that's the only difference. So if you don't want to just scroll over long lists of functionalities, then maybe it's better to have RustRover. With all products pack, everything is available, so you can just try and see for yourself what works better for you.
Well, I mean, I have to say that I've been using Rust Rover since I think I first heard about it in beta. I remember there was some pushback because of the whole like, oh, they deprecate the plugin and they're trying to make money from this, from this IDE. And I mean, I didn't know what to say at the time. I mean, I read the sense in the room and I was like, yeah, maybe. I mean, they got to make money and maybe they weren't seeing the payoff with the plugin, but it doesn't sound like maybe that's just that's necessarily true. I'm not going to ask you that kind of question, but I have to say that I love RustRover. It's been fantastic to use. I'm not too sure about the features for like the AI and stuff, how well it works because I'm in Hong Kong and a lot of stuff is blocked because of situation. But I have to say, like, I've been super happy with it. I remember trying to use IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate, and like as I was typing, none of the IntelliSense was working, and it was driving me nuts. I just couldn't use it anymore because when you're writing code, you need that IntelliSense to kind of tell you what methods are there and this kind of stuff. It just wasn't working. I'm not sure if it was what the problem was, but with RustRover, it works quite well. I haven't had any issues. I love clicking the play button. Makes life much easier. I hate that rather than typing out the command line. I mean, I'm a command line fanatic, but it gets annoying to keep typing the same commands over and over and over again. I guess I could make an alias, but I'd rather just click the green button. Just makes you feel better clicking a button than to type out the command.
Well, I should say that bugs happen, unfortunately. So maybe you experienced some bug in IntelliJ IDEA, but maybe it was just one specific version with that bug. Maybe something else. It's hard to tell now. But like right now, RustRover and Rust plugin in IntelliJ IDEA, it's just the same code, and that's it. Like I wanted to add one thing about making money from that community plugin. So there are two things here. So first, the old plugin was also developed mostly by JetBrains. So JetBrains paid salary to those folks developing plugin. We had some community contribution, of course, and we were very grateful to those folks actually contributing to that plugin from outside of JetBrains. But it was still like a huge burden on our developers to review those pull requests or maybe to rewrite almost everything from scratch. So it was like very demanding in terms of our JetBrains resources. So, in some sense, we made it easier for us to develop a new product, because when you're developing a new product, new IDE, you need to focus on delivering new features, on fixing performance bugs and any other bugs. So, at this situation, it is very difficult to also think about accepting external contributions. So we needed to focus on the fast pace of development. And that's why it was easier to do that without external contributions. So we decided to do it this way. So if we are developing a product, for us, it's just our experience at JetBrains. We used to do that. It's just how we always work. So that's an idea. Of course, it was tough decision, of course, and we were thinking a lot about it. But I think eventually one thing is that several prominent contributors to IntelliJ Rust plugin actually they supported us very actively on Reddit in all those discussions, and we are extremely grateful to them. So folks who were actually contributing to IntelliJ Rust plugin, they said at that time that we did the right thing. So they understood what we are up to, they understood what we are going to do with Rust, and they supported us. And we are like extremely grateful to them for that support.
It's always tricky, right? I mean, everybody wants these tools and they want, you know, them to be good and they complain when they're not good. But if there's a tool that has value to it, I'm not saying everybody and for every tool, but even people that are more willing to pay, it's really a gamble. Like, will you actually pay for this one versus this one? Why that one? Why is this one worth money to you, and why is this one that's also paid that you think is not worth the money? It's really tricky thing trying to maneuver that kind of landscape, right? I'm not against paying for stuff that's useful for me, and sometimes I'm more than happy to even just proactively just throw a couple bucks out because I know that everybody's got to eat, and people are spending time on this. And if they can support themselves full time from it and really make it a kick ass product, I think it's worth it to try to support them if you can. I mean, I'm a little bit of a gamer. I'm getting more and more into games these days, and sometimes, I mean, I don't know if you ever play games, Vitaly, or not, but specifically with newer games, they sell DLCs. They sell like skins. You get a different hat, right? I will like if I love the game a lot, I'll say, you know what, I really love this game. I'll buy the DLC, even though I don't care about what my character looks like. I just want to just support them, saying you guys are doing a great job. I'm buying this thing, and I never always use those skins. I just buy it because I want to support them. I want them to know, I like this stuff, and I think that that to me is important. But I mean, it's tricky with open source because people are like, "Oh, this is open source," or "This is a tool for I use for development. It shouldn't be. It should be free." But then they complain, "Oh, well, how come it's not working?" or this bug and that bug, and they have no patience when it comes to this, or they're not supporting it even with pull requests and stuff. I had this discussion with a developer this morning where he was like, "Oh, the documentation's not good. This is wrong, this wrong." And I'm like, "Well, you know how it works now, right? Yeah. So why don't you just send a PR with an update rather than just keep complaining about how the documentation is so bad in this project instead of just commit to it." I mean, it's done by just a couple of people, and a lot of people are using it, but nobody's like actively committing and offering support. They're just bashing it, saying how bad the docs are. But you know what I mean? Like this kind of dilemma. I mean, I'm sure JetBrains has a lot of discussions about how to do this because once you take something that's known as open source or source available or whatever kind of name you want to use, and it becomes something behind a license. I don't know. I'm kind of curious if you can talk anything about that kind of process because that's really, really tricky to go from this is for everybody to we're no longer supporting this. We have this other one. And if you're going to use it commercially, you're going to have to support it financially.
We at JetBrains we have a very large open source department because we also develop a Kotlin programming language, which is open source, and even some distributions of our IDEs, for example, IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition, it is also open sourced. So we do a lot of open source stuff. But like here in the case of RustRover, so if you are a paid customer, then you have access to our support. So we have support engineer. And like in your example about documentation, we have a person working on our documentation full time. And that person provides like a lot of information in the documentation. In many cases, if there is some question, I usually send folks to that documentation because it is really good. Like RustRover documentation explains you a lot of stuff about how to do things in RustRover, how to debug, how to test. And like sometimes my talks about RustRover, they are mainly like I'm just saying what is written there in the documentation because it is so good, right? And many developers they are not used to reading documentation, unfortunately, but it's all there. So of course this like being commercial product means a lot, so you need to provide some level of support. So if you take money, then you provide support, and we do that. And this is something that was impossible before going out with commercial product. Like if you develop something like community version, then you don't do support. You are not supposed to, and you just don't do that stuff. So it's a very different level of support, and we also care about customers. Like if you're a big customer and you have some feedback, we are always willing to listen to it. We don't guarantee that we'll fix every bug that annoys you, but we can do that. Why not? So we also use our issue tracker for like prioritizing stuff. If we see that some of the things we have is wrong, then we see that folks are voting for some issue, then we fix it. Like this was like as one of examples, we had this issue with web development support. At some point, we removed that support from RustRover, and we had some reasons behind it. Our stats show that it's not very popular, and also we were thinking about reducing the cost for commercial version of RustRover. But then, thanks to the community, we realized that this functionality is needed. So we've got a lot of complaints, but also actual use cases when people are actually in, like, they need this functionality. And as a result of that communication with the community, we decided to get that support back. So this is an example of how it works. Like, if you are providing a commercial product, you need to listen to your customers, and we do. So it actually works in our case, I think. And if, like, otherwise, like before this time of RustRover, no one would expect any level of serious support from us, because it was just something taken not that seriously. But now we are very serious. We are present in the Rust ecosystem, and that's why we go to conferences. That's why we want more users, to have more users doing Rust in our IDE. So that means, like, we have a commercial product for the Rust ecosystem.
That's a good point. I mean, it's also good on your side that, you communicate that you're removing this, and the fact that you, like you said, you listened and you reverse course is good. Yeah, okay, that's fantastic. It's good to hear. I didn't even know that there was any web support. I mean, I'm just using it to build a terminal application, to be honest, to help me out with something. So that's interesting. I mean, I know there's a ton of features in here. I just haven't had a need. To me, as I said before, the best need I found so far is just clicking the run button. That's my biggest need. And having the pop-ups, the IntelliSense kind of stuff. I don't know. I've just been a huge fan of JetBrains products for a while, so I've been pretty happy with this and more like Rust stuff in it.
It is amazing. So, which wonderful things people actually built with our tools. Like in that issue about web support, we've got so many, like, fascinating use cases for RustRover and web technologies. So I just reading, like, every comment on that thread. I was reading, and I was just it was amazing even to read all that stuff. So it's really interesting how folks are actually using it.
Actually, I'd kinda like to touch a little bit on the product, right? Obviously, AI is something that you've already added. I'm sure you may be adding more features to it. Like, what else is in the pipeline for RustRover for people who are using the product? Because to me, I mean, it hits basically everything I need. I'm not trying to say that there's no more features I could use because maybe I don't know it yet, that there could be something interesting, but is there anything that's coming up in the future for RustRover?
We decided not to have a public roadmap for RustRover, because for some things it is very difficult to come up with actual promises, because some of the things really, we are really researching stuff. We are trying to do some things much better. But I can share some directions that we actually take at JetBrains in general and in RustRover team. So AI is extremely important for us, because as we see it, it is extremely important for our users. And when I say AI, I mean a lot of things. It's not just generating code. It's not just refactoring code. It's also about fine tuning your experience with our IDEs, like predicting if you are doing something at this point, maybe chances are you will need something else at some other point. And this is an example of things where AI can work really well. For example, if you are adding some dependency to your project, well, that means something. It means that you are going to do something with this particular library. And that means that in our suggestions to complete your code, we can give you informed suggestions about how to proceed. Like, And there are a lot of things like that. If you did something, chances are we can predict where to put your cursor after your changes, because like you will continue with something else predictable. So that kind of stuff. So a lot of research about AI and applying AI to coding is done at JetBrains, and we work on that. Like from the Rust side, one of our focuses here is to explain what's going on with your code if you have some error. Like our goal is to help you to understand what's going on, why it's an error, maybe highlight it in a little bit different way. Like for example, our recently published feature was when you are using some variable which is no longer accessible, we can, like, because of lifetimes or maybe borrow checking stuff, so in some cases we can show you the actual reason. So of course you cannot use this variable at this point. Why? Because this variable was moved at that point. So we give like more information about an error, so it's easier for you to fix it. So that kind of things. So how to make like more smoother experience in writing your code. So a lot of that stuff is a work in progress right now. But no promises, because this stuff is like, it's research actually. We don't know at what point in the future we will be ready to ship it. So that's why we don't promise it.
Now, is this basically a research project where it may actually go to nothing, or is this research to how to actually do it, and you're going to do it no matter what?
Well, of course, we hope to ship something at some point. But with research, you never know. Maybe it's something useless. Nobody would use it. Then we don't do that. So it's okay to forget about some stuff you were going to do. Maybe just it's not a good idea to continue with that. So we'll see. I can mention one feature that we've got recently, so-called full line code completion, for example. And the idea behind it is to run some fine-tuned local model to generate your code. So no connection to some AI LLM providers, just local code. It runs and it predicts. In some cases, especially if you develop some code with a well-known framework, for example, like Axum. You're doing web development with Axum. So you write some handler, and in this case, full line completion will be very powerful, because that model knows how to write stuff using that library. So you just get a lot of suggestions on how to proceed. And in some cases, you just accept them, because they're just what you actually need. So you give a name for a function, and then RustRover is able to come up with actual implementation. Not something hard-coded there, but actual implementation which uses information from your dependencies, information from your code you have in this very file, and all that stuff. So it works pretty effective, I should say.
Okay. Yeah. This is, I mean, it's looking pretty good. It sounds like I just got to crack it open. And I was looking at the pricing page. You do pretty much spell out that, if you're not doing it, if you're not using this for commercial reasons, you can definitely use it personally, not a problem. But if you do, I mean, $69 a year depends what you're doing. I mean, for a company that's, I mean, what is a GitHub account? What is that? Also $60 a year or something like that. I don't think it's massively expensive for a company to pay out for. But I guess it depends on the value that they see in it too, right? What has been the response from the community about the pricing? Because I mean, if you're paying for it by yourself, it's not. I mean, it depends on your budget, right? Where the hell you're located at in the world, but it's not cheap, but it's also not too bad. I would say if you're actually making money with this.
Well, for us, it was very important to provide free RustRover for free for non-commercial use. So if you don't do commercial development with RustRover, for example, if you just learn Rust, if you use it for some pet project, if you do something that is not directly used for making money, then RustRover is free for you. This whole licensing scheme is actually a result of our analysis of the whole Rust ecosystem. So we knew that, and also because of our history with the open source plugin that we've deprecated. So we felt that we need to give back something, give back to the community. And this is our offering basically. So you can use same functionality. It's not reduced version of RustRover. It's just same RustRover, but free for non-commercial use. And then, of course, pricing for commercial use is some result of a very deep analysis. And we have departments at JetBrains who actually try to analyze a lot of stuff and come up with that pricing. And yeah, well, it is cheap for other folks, and we know that it is not that cheap, especially if we are talking about emerging markets. Like if you are in Africa, for example, you're a developer in somewhere in Nigeria, then even $60 is just not that accessible. So of course we know that, but it's how, like, there is a process how we came up with these numbers. But we also believe that this free option, free for non-commercial use, it should be very helpful for those community members who cannot afford JetBrains IDEs. So yeah, that's what we decided to do with RustRover.
And just to make this very clear, I think we talked about this before the show. The difference between the free non-commercial version and the commercial version that's paid for, there's no difference, right? You're getting the same experience across.
In terms of functionality, there is absolutely no difference. It's the same functionality, it's the same IDE build. So just all the same, no reduced functionality, nothing like that.
Which I think is great because, there's always this thought like, oh, what am I missing out on? If I pay for it, maybe I get some better feature. And I'm talking about pay for it in terms of personal use. I mean, if you're learning, some people, if you're learning, they want to get the best tool out there. They buy the best guitar. They're learning to play guitar finally, and they want to buy the best one out there, Gibson or whatever. I'm not so much into guitars as I am other things, but it's just basically no. First, start with the non-commercial version. You're just learning Rust, or you're just playing around with it. You want to give it a try. Go that route. You find value. You're making money with it. Consider to get or you should, or you have to, sorry, not consider, you need to get the commercial version and help to keep the IDE going and bringing value to everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And it is implemented in a very simple way. You just download RustRover, you start it, and the first question you have to answer, how are you going to use it? Right? If it's non-commercial use, you just choose it, and then there is no need to pay anything. If it's commercial use, you just choose this button for commercial use, and then you'll need to provide a license for that. So yeah, that's very simple.
Oh, that's good. I think to me that's a really important thing to show is that there's no difference between the two. And I'm guessing switching licenses probably is pretty straightforward. I think you just go to like to help or something, and then I forgot. I think I did it a long time ago.
Yeah, you just choose another license, and that's it.
Perfect.
You will need for that you will need JetBrains account and all that technical stuff, but of course it's all very easy to switch.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about conferences, your experiences, Rust Rover, what JetBrains is doing to help out the community, but at the same time, of course, they need support in order to keep doing what they're doing. Is there anything that I missed that you want really to get across to everybody out there about what JetBrains is doing in the Rust community or anything else?
We at JetBrains, we like very open to very different stuff. So we also provide licenses for, like, for example, so if you run a local meetup group, like Rust Meetup, for example. So we have a web page on our website for community support. You can just go there and you can request free licenses for giveaways, for example. You can request some product swag if you're interested in stickers for your meetup participants. You can request them and you can get them. So very, very easily. So there are some limits in terms of like number of meetup participants, something like that. But still, you can grow your meetup and then request whatever we can provide. We also have programs for open source developers. Well, open source doesn't always mean non-commercial development. So that's very important. Sometimes it is like open source development is used commercially. So, but we also have special programs for open source projects. So if you are developing an open source project and you feel that it's like commercial use, then you still can get licenses for free, because we do support open source developers out there. So we can provide licenses for them. And we also do a lot of stuff for education. Like if you are university student, for example, like any university, then you can apply for licenses as well. And those licenses will include commercial development. So if you're a university student, you can get everything that we do at JetBrains for free, and then you can use it as you like. So we do a lot of stuff for different groups of customers, and we are always happy to help. And we are thinking actually in Rust space, we are thinking about other stuff. So for example, we are members of Rust Foundation, but we also think about how we can support some individual developers, for example, some open source projects which are crucial for a Rust ecosystem. And we think about that, and we are not rolling out our programs in this area, but given our experience with other ecosystems, we can actually do something meaningful here as well. So it's work in progress. So like stay in touch. So we are working on that.
It's good to hear. I totally forgot about that. I applied for some licenses. I need to go back and take a look at it, and you helped me with that process because it was, yeah, there was some misunderstanding. So, can if people have the same problem, can they also reach out to you for some assistance?
Yeah, of course. So as a developer advocate for RustRover, for everything Rust related at JetBrains, I am pretty open to any sort of communication. Like I am available on like Mastodon, on Twitter, and my email is Vitaly.Bragilevsky at jetbrains.com. So just please write to me and I can do whatever I can for you. So of course, I am very open to any sort of collaboration actually. And I'm open to like there are like maybe you have to understand that JetBrains is a big company. It works with different ecosystems, and all those ecosystems have like they differ in a lot of stuff, like size of meetups, size of conferences. Practices that are common in one ecosystem can be very alien to other ecosystem. So as a member of Rust community, I am trying to be relevant to Rust community. And of course, if some general approaches at JetBrains don't work for Rust ecosystem, then I can try to tweak something in this regard. So of course, I'm always willing to help.
Yeah, it's good to hear because I know I had some issue and you helped me to solve that one. So of course I really appreciate that. Well, again, it's great to have you on. Good to see you again. Hopefully we'll run into each other in another conference, maybe Rust Asia 2025. I don't know if you. That's right. You're going to be busy at that time. Maybe your colleagues will be there. I'm hoping we'll run into each other again. I'm guessing you'll probably come to China again for another conference because they always have a couple of them every year. So we'll probably see you again sometime soon.
Yeah, no plans for next year so far. So maybe.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Again, it's good to see you again, and I wish Rust Rover keeps going, and yeah, and I hope people can find value in it.
Thank you.